With the way that Dokkan has been recently designing units, we have to start thinking about how long-form content is more necessary within Dokkan. What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the 5-9 mobile channel. My name is Villuhfy, and today we're going to be having a discussion about, the form of content within the game, how units are kind of pertaining to that, and what needs to be done going forward for us to have a good environment that is set up for some of these newer units that we are getting. So obviously the inspiration for this video is the new Dokkan Fest Super 17 that's coming out that needs to have more long form content in order to see him consistently. So that is where we are going to be talking about how the game is making units that are not suited for the game whatsoever right now, because it's just too based on getting to a point where you're just not realistically able to get to. Now, this is not to say that the units that are made for long content are bad, but it is also to say that, a lot of the content that we are seeing at the moment is based on units that hit super hard right away, and units like, the Buu Saga duo are just not suited to be able to withstand a barrage from a lot of bosses on the first turn, and, you can't get that standby on turn one where they are invincible. So you do have to think about that kind of thing. So I guess what I want to kind of do is take a look and see how they've done long content in the past and kind of, base that on what I think we should be able to get going forward. So let's go ahead and take a look at like the first kind of form of long form content that doesn't really pertain to how you would want long content to be, but I think it is important. So the first one we're going to be talking about is Boss Rush. Now, Boss Rush, if you guys aren't aware and you're kind of newer to Dokkan, is basically a long stretch where you continue to play a bunch of Dokkan events over and over and over again, not over and over again, but in succession with one another in order to kind of get done, right? So think about, you'll do, just for an example, you'll do like the Merge Zamasu Dokkan event, and then you'll do the Vegito Blue Dokkan event, and you'll go forward doing like 5 or 6 until you're at the end. It's kind of tedious, but it is a way, like it was like, some of the easiest stones that you could get, but back in the day, it was kind of like a big flex to be able to do Boss Rush with no items, right? Because Dokkan events were hard at that time, and it wasn't like, it wasn't a pushover to beat a Boss Rush, right? And I think that's important to note, because when you have this type of idea, you have to execute with it, right? When you're using, when you're doing this long form content, this is like not the ideal stuff for content in the game right now, because this resets your units, the stacking resets and all that fun stuff. It's like going in between fights in Super Battle Road, right? Where your Dokkan meter still progresses and your items still count if you use them, but you don't have the stacking, like, so you'll go back down to your base defensive stat. So that obviously is not the way they would want to do it. So Super Battle Road, short form content, stuff like Red Zone, I think some of the stages are good and some of them you can get pretty far along, but that is another time down the line. So I would say that the long form content that we need to take inspiration from in order to make this as successful as possible is something like the Legendary Goku event. Now, obviously, this is not to say that the Legendary Goku event is the standard these days, but this is to say that I think that this is a good model to go for the long form content, where we have a very hard end game boss. Like, if you guys remember when the Goku event came out, like, it was not easy, right? Like, LRK and Caulifla made it look very easy, but it was not. Like, you got to that Int UI Goku boss, it was really tough, and a lot of the STR unit, or a lot of the physical units you would bring to kind of take down that Int phase would get you in a lot of trouble with the STR phase before it. So I think that the Goku event being kind of the basis for this would be really good, because that at the beginning was an event where you had to do a lot of turns and it would take a while so you could actually see stacking units stack, and this is what made long form content units almost more valuable than the short form content units that we have now, right? Because we think about how the evolution of content has come from the last like 3 years with the anniversary. We have the God event, we have the Red Zone, we have the new Shadow Dragon fights. These fights are not going over 10 to 20 turns, right? Where the Goku event, like, if you were running a team that wasn't like the absolute peak of the meta at the time, you could easily see a run that goes 30 plus turns. Like, even with the Vegeta event, right? Like, if you guys have done the Worthy Rivals mission, like, before we got a lot of the characters now, like back in 2021 when that came out and that was a mission, we're talking about like AGL Pycon, AGL Nail, Physical Piccolo, a couple of Vegeta units, and this like my original run for that took like 30 something minutes, or Corroded Body and Mind before we got LR Janemba, right? Where you had to rely on Int Janemba or STR Janemba's Easy A. Like, this takes a really long time, so we're talking 30 to 40 minutes in one stage, and if we're gonna do 20 to 30 minute fights, then this is good, because we can get the standby for the Buu Saga unit. We can get this Super 17 out, because, I saw something about like Super 17 being fully built up at turn like 15. That's just not like realistic in any form of content right now.
What?
Like, even with the new anniversary battle, like, those are some long fights, but it's not turn 15 long fights, you know what I mean? That's where things get really, really interesting. So, I would hope that, you know, the basis for this, like the Goku event, would be kind of the way you'd want to go about it, right? Because I think that is where you're really going to be able to get a lot of value out of this stuff, because the standby skills, you know, taking you to like turn, because you want to fully build that up, right? So like with the Super Spirit Bomb, you want to take those extra additional turns to get all the chargers in and go. So, you know, when we have more long form content that makes it more easy to do, and we have like, when I say easy to do, it's like just more accessible for some of these units, and it gives us more creative freedom with the standby skills, with building up, and like, you know, even when we look back to something like when Int Broly came out, right? With his active skill condition, most of the time, you know, what's the famous truth quote? If it's turn 6, right? You guys know what I mean? Like, content these days is like, it's usually like a 6 to 7 turn fight, maybe a little bit closer to 8 or 9 or 10. So like anywhere in that 6 to 10 turn range, and there's just a lot of units that you want to build up for a while, and turn 10 is just not acceptable, right? Like that's just, it's too long into the event, and by the time you're there, it's either you're dead because the boss hits too hard, or you're just not able to build up because you had to float them off to intentionally do something, you had to stall to get there. It really makes it difficult, and when we get that more longer form content, I think that is where you're really going to be able to see some of these units shine, because what the 8th anniversary has kind of started for Dokkan is a kind of reimagination of long content, right? Where we want to have units that benefit from being in this longer form content, where, you know, if you have, so what if you get the Buu Saga unit in standby, and then you finish the fight within the next 2 turns, and you don't even get to use that Super Spirit Bomb, right? It's like, when I use that Buu Saga unit, I want to use the Super Spirit Bomb every time I use them. And within the content in the game right now, that's just not possible to get the best case scenario for the Super Spirit Bomb every time I use them. And I think that's a shame, because these are the mechanics that I want to see. These are the animations that people want to see. This is why you're paying money for the unit. This is why you're going crazy for it, because they're doing this new mechanic, right? You're summoning for the 7-year-olds because they're hype and they have 200% leader skills. No other units have the 200% leader skills at the time. That's why you're summoning for these units. And I think that's really, really important to kind of emphasize. And that's, like I said, what I see with this unit right here, this Super 17, it's the same kind of idea, right? Like if you are summoning for Super 17, which I would advise you don't, because Saiyan Day is in 16 days, but if you are going to be one of those guys that summons for Super 17, you want to have content in the game that kind of like suits the description, right? Where you can actually get to that turn 15 and use him at his best and stuff like that. And I think when you're able to do that, it is really important. So the TLDR of this is, if you are summoning for these new units and you do have them, I think that the game needs to give us content that is more you know, suited to what they do, right? And if when we get that, it just makes it more fun to use the units, it's more fun to play with the units, and that way, you know, you just get more bang for your buck in terms of like what units can do. So let us know down below what you guys think of the content in the game. Does it need to be revamped a little bit? Do we need to see more longer form content? Do you think the way that it is right now is fine? All types of different things, but that's all I really got for you in today's video. My name has been Villuhfy. It's been a pleasure hosting for you. If you like Dokkan content like this, feel free to check out my channel. I do videos just like this. And like I said, that's all I really got for you. So thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to leave a like if you did enjoy. Subscribe if you are new, and we'll catch you guys next time.